Hey guys, it's Thomas here with Technovision, and in this episode of the Minecraft modding tutorial series, we're going to be covering advanced block models as well as making them directional. So essentially this is going to be an advanced block, and I really recommend that you watch this video all the way through before you attempt any of these steps, because it is a lot of steps and you can mess it up really easily. So I think for the best experience, you should watch it first and then try to complete the steps afterwards. So to get right into it, what you want to do is go to the first link in the description, and you want to download this new program called Blockbench. And this is going to be a desktop application that will allow you, as you can see here, to make really advanced blocks. This is also what we'll be using for entities, as well as animating your blocks and entities. So it's just a really useful free application. So click the download button, and it'll take you to this download page. Download whatever is meant for your operating system. Mine is Windows. And it'll download. And once you have it on your desktop, which I already have, what you want to do is double click it, of course, and it's going to install Blockbench. And this is just a regular install process, so you're just going to have to wait for it to finish. And once it's done, it should automatically launch. But if you if it doesn't do that for you, you can just double click the Blockbench application here. We can get rid of this installer now. So inside of Blockbench here, we've got a menu here to choose from of different models. So what we want is a Java block item. So click on Java block item here. And what you want to do is give it a file name. So in my case, I'm going to name this oven, because I'm going to make an oven block. So you want oven. Then for the parent model, you can just leave this blank. Have ambient occlusion checked. You can leave box UV unchecked. And then this width and height is going to be how high and wide your block is. So if you want it to be within the portions of one Minecraft block, you'd want to set this to 16 by 16. I would recommend keeping this to 16 by 16 if it's your first time using this, and then you can experiment with it later. So hit confirm, and you will get this little menu here that allows you to design your custom block. So I will leave a link in the description to a tutorial on how to use Blockbench, because I'm not going to go through all the features because there really is a lot. But essentially what you want to do, and I really recommend you watch that video before continuing, because this is going to be a little confusing. But first thing you definitely want to do, come up to filter, go to plugins, and I already have it installed here because I was testing it earlier, but normally it'll say no plugins installed. You want to go to available, and you want to search for mod utils. Once you see this mod utils by JTK, you want to install it, and it'll take a second here, but once it is installed, what you want to do is just close out of Blockbench and then open it back up again. That will refresh this plugin. And I forgot to save, so just let's make our item again. Again, the file name, whatever you want to name it. Mine is going to be oven. And then leave everything the same, hit confirm. All right, so in order to start designing your block, you can come over to this outliner here and hit add cube. And this will add a single cube to your block bench. Now with this cube, what you can do, and keeping in mind that this grid here is a 16 by 16 grid representing a regular Minecraft block, you can take this cube and you can move it around. You can double click it to enter a new mode that allows you to expand it in every direction. And essentially what you can do is you can add multiple of these cubes here by going to the outliner. And as you add more cubes, you can design your block however you like, and essentially make a custom block model. And this, whatever you design here, will show up in the game later on once we complete the remaining steps. So what I would recommend is mess around with this, get comfortable with it, create some cubes. What you do want to do, and the tutorial I will link in the description will show this, is once you're done making your model, you want to highlight all of your cubes with Control A, and then go over to textures here and create a texture. And you want to name this whatever you want, really. It can be, I would recommend the same name as your block, so in my case oven. And then you want to click template and then hit confirm, and select like a color, a base color, or you can just leave it to like transparent or white. And leave everything the same here, hit confirm, and it will generate a texture, essentially a texture map for you based on what your block looks like. It'll do it dynamically. And now whenever you want to texture a side of one of your blocks, you can just click on one of these one of the sides of your block, so like the red side here, and you can see it highlights that side of the texture map. And now you can paint with it, you can change it however you like. You can see you can expand this window here, and as we expand it, it does change where the texture is mapped to. And even better, you can save this texture with this button here, throw it into like Photoshop and edit it from there. So that's how you create textures. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna speed through a time lapse of me creating my custom oven block and texturing it, and then I will see you guys when I'm done. Alright, so I have my block pitch model finished and textured, but what we need to do is come over to display here and in the top right corner, and you'll notice that it looks really big in this player's hand, but essentially what you can use here is you can change what your item looks like in different perspective modes. So for example, obviously our block is going to look like this when it's placed on the ground, just as you made it, but in the player's hand we want to change how big it is, of course. So for example, I want my block to be much smaller. If there's a way to do that, scale, here we go. I want it to be, oh, not that way. I want it to be smaller, just in general. Maybe we can make it like 0.3 for all variables. There we go. So I want it to be much smaller in the player's hand, and of course I want it to be like rotated a little bit outwards. There we go. I don't want it to clip through their hand, but you can mess around with this yourself. There we go. So it looks like they're kind of just like holding the block now. Again, set this to however you want. This is what it'll look like in the game when you hold it. Next, we want to also make sure, you can also try some other reference models as well, like zombies and that sort of thing. Next, you want to make sure that the third person left hand is also the same. So again, we might want to change the size here to like 0.3 so it's not as big in the hand. And I want to rotate this up a little bit. So yeah, and then also first person right. This is what it's going to look like in first person when you're holding it in your hand. So definitely make this a lot smaller. I'm going to say like 0.4 for this one. 0.4, there we go. And that looks fine. So that's what it's going to look like when you're looking in the game and it's in the bottom right corner in your hand in first person. There's also first person left. Again, you can just copy exactly what you did before. I'm going to have this before and then 0.4 for the size in every single scale. There we go. So that's how it looks on your left hand. And then also if you wanted to use it as like a hat per se, you could set what it looks like on your head. I'm just going to set it right there. I actually think that looks kind of cute. There's also the ground as well. This is what it's going to look like when it's floating on the ground. You can see that right now it's actually clipping through a block. So if you were to throw this block onto the ground, it would actually clip into the ground. So you definitely want to fix this. We can move it up a little bit so it's not clipping as much. And then definitely make it a little bit smaller, like 0.3 maybe, because right now it's like the size of the entire block. That's definitely a little too small, maybe like 0.6. There we go, that looks fine, maybe a little bit lower. So now it should look normal when you throw it on the ground as an item. And then I think the last one is an item frame. So you can mess how it will look with in an item frame, as well as a GUI. This is like in your inventory, what it'll look like. And I think you can, yeah, like rotate it around. So I want like the front, for example, to like face the player. So hold on, this is being very tricky. There we go. So now it'll actually look like it's facing the player, and you could even make it like look a little bit 3D in the inventory. So I could have it be like, let's make it a little bit smaller here, 0.8, 0.8, and then 0.8. There we go. So now it looks like a 3D block that's sort of sitting in your inventory facing the player. So yeah, once you set all of these to how you like them, again, you really should do this before you move on. Then you can go back to edit and we can continue on. All right, so now that you have your block bench model completely finished and textured, what you want to do is a few things. First, come over to your texture here, right click, save as, and save it to your desktop as a PNG texture. And make sure it's named the same name as your block. I already did that, but just do that if you haven't already. Next, you want to come up to File, Export, and you want to export as a block model. Now this will generate a JSON file essentially that we'll use in the game for our block. And you want to name it again the same thing that you named your block or what you will name it, and make sure this is set to Java block/item model and save that to your desktop. I've already done that, but do that right now. And keep this window open, or at the very least file, save a project, because we will come back to this in a second for something that I will show you later on. So definitely keep this window open or save it. But once you've done that, go to your desktop and you should now have your texture and your JSON. And if you open up this JSON real quick with either text edit, or you can open it up with Notepad++, you want to make sure that you change a few things here. You're going to notice that, well, what this is doing is mapping essentially all of the blocks and as well as the texture for you essentially. But what you want to do is in front of the blocks here on 0, on line 4, you want to add your mod ID, so mine is tutorial with a colon, and you want to do the same thing for particle, tutorial colon, and you want to change this texture here, where it says texture, to the name of your JSON or your block. So my block is going to be oven, so you want to name this oven. And again, this name that you set here and the name of this file is going to be what you use for everything in the game now. You're going to use it to for your texture, you're going to use it for your block registry name, all of that stuff. So keep that in mind. Once you've done that, again, your item name, your block name I mean, and your mod ID with a colon, you want to save, and then open up IntelliJ, open your IntelliJ project. And now that we have our block, we can actually make it in the game, because this is just the model, but we actually need to make the block. So just like we've done every single time, come to your registry handler class, and we can just copy one of our previous blocks. So I'm gonna copy our Ruby block, our Ruby or block, make a new block. And again, you wanna change the name to whatever the name of your block is. Mine is gonna be oven. You want to keep everything the same except for the registry name. And again, like I mentioned, the same name that we use everywhere is going to be oven for me. And then you want to change the class to a custom block class that you're going to make. We haven't made this yet, but just name it exactly what you've put here, but with a capital first letter. So in my case, it's going to be oven. If you were making like something with multiple words, you would want like oven, stove, block, like something like that. So mine is going to be oven. And don't worry about this error. We're going to make this class later on, so just leave it there for right now. Next thing you want to do is make the block item. So again, we need to copy our one of our blocks we've made now, paste it below, and everything is going to be the same except of course the name here. We're going to change this to oven_item, and we want to change the registry name as well to oven, and we want to change the block item as well from Ruby or to our oven, because we want to get our block that we just created here. And then everything can be the same. Again, you can set the .group, the tutorial tab, all of that stuff, all right here if you need to. That's all up to you to decide if you want your custom tab or your vanilla tab, as well as some other methods that you can mess around with in here to your liking. So now that we have our items in the game, we actually need to add this custom class here. So go over to your blocks package, where our other block classes are, and you want to right click, create a new class just like we're used to, and again name it exactly what you put here for your block. Mine is going to be oven, and you want to add this to the repository. Now this class is not going to be what you're used to. I mean the first part is, but it's going to start getting pretty advanced, so again bear with me. We're just going to have to go through the steps slowly. So first thing you want to do of course is make sure that this extends block, and this is going to allow you to import block and implement all of the methods if you hover over it again, create constructor matching super. So now that we have the constructor, you want to treat this just like you have every other block at first. So if we open up like our Ruby block here, you can see that we set our properties with a material type, a hardness and resistance, a sound, a harvest level, harvest tool. I don't know why I deleted, but we should have set requires tool as well in here. I mentioned that in the last video, very important. So if you don't have that, definitely add that. But yeah, coming back to our class here, we want to do the same sort of thing. So Again, we can get rid of this thing that we pass in here because we don't need it, and we can just type block.properties.create, and we can do material dot, and you can choose a material type. Mine is going to be iron because this is like a metal furnace or a metal stove or oven. And then we can bring this down here and we can just add methods as needed. So we can set the hardness and resistance as you're used to, 3.5F for me, and I'm going to set this to 4.0F. Again, none of this should be new to you if you are comfortable with blocks. And if you're not comfortable with making blocks, then you should probably not be watching this video. You should probably be starting with basic blocks. We can set a .sound, and I want my sound type to be anvil because I want it to be like a metal-y sound, a metal-urgy sound. And then .harvest level, I'm just gonna let this be 0 so you can mine it with any tool. Any tool tier rather. We can also set the harvest tool type, harvest tool, and this is a metal furnace type block, so it's gonna be a tool type .pickaxe for me. And of course, just like every block we make in 1.16, it now has to have set requires tool if you want it to have a harvest level. All right, so now that we have all this done, our block class is good. So we can actually go to our registry handler here and import oven, import class. Now this is all great, but if we go back to our oven.java class here, one thing we want is, since this is a special block that has a specific direction, like the textures are different on each side, and so is the model, what we want is for the block to face us every time we place it. Kind of like how when you place a furnace, the front of the furnace is always facing you when you place it. Same sort of idea here. And you can apply this to any block. It doesn't have to be an advanced model block. It can just be something like a furnace block. That will work as well. So in order to do that, in order to make our block face us every time we place it, we want to, and again, you don't have to add this. This is totally optional, but just gonna show it anyway. You wanna add a private static final direction property, and we just want to name this like facing or whatever you want really, is equal to horizontal block dot horizontal facing. And we're going to use this in a second here with some methods. So we're going to have to override a couple methods actually. First method we should be overriding is the get default, or the get state for placement rather. So @override get state for placement. There we go, right there. Hit OK. And you can leave this nullable if you want, or get rid of it. It doesn't really matter. But you definitely want to get rid of this super here. So get rid of this super, and you want to return instead this, which is going to access this class, dot get default state, dot width, and then you want to pass into here your new facing variable that you created, as well as the context that is passed into this method, context. I really can't spell today. Context dot get placement horizontal facing dot get opposite, and this is going to get the state whenever you place the block. And next we need to get the actual rotation, or we need to set the rotation. So we can do that with @override rotate. And with this, it is going to say deprecated, but remember that deprecations in Java, or Forge rather, are really talking about calling the method, not so much overriding them. So if you see a deprecated method, it is fine to override it, so don't worry about that. But again, we want to get rid of the super here, and instead we want to put state.width, and we want to pass in our new facing variable, as well as the rotation dot rotate, and you want to rotate with state.get, and again our facing variable. And this is going to be allow you to rotate the block as necessary. Next, and I think the last one, well actually the second to last one, we need to @override the mirror. So once you have this, again, remove the super method, and you want to add state.rotate, and inside of here we're going to pass in the mirror. So mirror in dot to rotate, or to rotation rather, and we're going to pass in our state.get, and then pass in the facing variable. All right, this is going to set the block state mirror, and I think the last thing we need to do is just fill the state container. Yeah, so let's do that really quickly. @override, and we want to fill the state container. That is not how you're supposed to fill state container. Okay, and then again, get rid of the super method, or this super here. And instead what we want to do is just have us use the builder and then add our facing variable. Okay, so this is all good now. So essentially, well, we haven't set the JSON yet, but assuming that our JSON will work fine, this will allow us to have the block rotate towards us every time we place it. Again, all of this is totally optional if that's what you want for your model. So now that we have this, we have to add the JSONs. And ooh, I know the scary part of custom blocks. So go to resources, go to assets, tutorial, and first one we should do is probably block states. So go to block states, right click, new, file, and we're gonna name this again, exactly the name that we put in registry handler, our oven here. So right click, new, file, oven.json, and add to repository. And now you'll notice with our Ruby block that this block, because it's a lot more simple, it only has a single variant for the model. But if you come to the description, you can find a paste bin here for this new block state, and you want to copy this and paste it in. And what this is going to allow us to do is use a different model for every time our block is facing in a different direction. And this is going to allow us to essentially fulfill this rotation here that allows your block to face you whenever you place it. If you don't want to use this, if you don't want your block to rotate every time towards you when you place it, you can just copy what's in Ruby_block here, what we made before. You can just copy this and use this instead because this is just a single variant. But if you want multiple variants facing north, south, west, and east, like we want here, then you are going to want to use this new JSON. And you want to replace the mod ID, again, with your custom mod ID. You want to do that for all of them. And you want to replace the item name, again, with the name of your item, which in my case is oven. And everything else you can leave the same if you're trying to get the same rotation effect. Okay, that's all good. We can close out of this. Next thing we want to do is come over to our models, go to item, you want to right click, and once again, new, file, and we want to name this again, just oven.json, add to repository. And in the description, there will be another paste bin here for the block item JSON. Just copy this. It's exactly what we're used to. You should already have some actually if you've made a regular block item. And again, replace the mod ID with tutorial, the name of your mod ID, and the item name, again, just oven. That's our item. So, and it's just a simple parent. It's just directing to the parent. All right, file, save all. Now is when it gets a little bit tricky. So the block JSON here, normally we set a block JSON, like Ruby_block here for our blocks, our block package. And you can see this is really simple, but again, we want a custom model. So what we need to do is get that file that we got from our block bench. Again, this is what we saved to our desktop here. Let me open it up so you can see. We talked about this just a few minutes ago, and we changed these values here. You're gonna wanna use this instead as your block JSON. So you wanna take this, hover over IntelliJ, and then just drag it right into your models.block folder. Again, it's models and then your block folder, and refactor and add to repository. And now it is in there, oven.json. And again, make sure that your mod ID is here with a colon, and then replace this name with the name of your item or your block. And again, ours is oven. So yeah, now just a couple of things left to do. We should definitely go up to our lang folder here, go to en_us.json and make a new entry here for our new block so we can name it. I'm just gonna copy what I have above for our block. Block.tutorial. The name of your block, which is oven. And I'm just gonna name it stone fire oven. Or that's a little too much. Let's just do oven. There we go. All right, so we have it named. And then also very important, do not forget this step. You want to open up your textures here. We do need to add the texture. Go to textures, go to blocks, and you want to drag your oven.png, again, making sure it has the same name as you set for everything else. You want to drag that custom texture into your blocks inside of textures. Refactor, add to repository, and there we go. So now our block is in the game. It's all ready and set to go with our custom model. There will be a couple problems, so definitely keep watching because we are going to work through those in a second here. But let's run the game and test it out. Alright, so we're inside of the game now, and if we come to our creative inventory, we can go to our custom tab here, and we can get our new block that we've just created, our oven block. And you can see that just like we set in Blockbench, it does have a perfect model in our hand, in first person mode, it looks good, and when we throw it on the ground, it's all proportional. So all that stuff that you set in Blockbench is working great. And if we place it, we can see that it does have our sound and the model is working. Now, I did want to show you guys some issues here first before we fix them, just so you know what's going on and how to fix these things. So the reason that this texture is clipping here in the bottom is because, as you can see, the game thinks that this block here, despite the model that we set, is its voxel shape is a full block. And you can see here, if we put a full block next to it, you can see the voxel shape is pretty much exactly like a full block. So what we need to do is go back into IntelliJ and tell the game and Forge essentially that this block is actually this model. So we're going to set this this voxel shape to our model, and that will get rid of all this texture clipping. And we're also going to mess around with some shadows, so definitely stick around and I'll see you back in IntelliJ. Alright, so what you want to do is come to your custom block class. Mine is called oven, that we just made recently. And inside of here, what we're going to do is create a couple variables for our voxel shapes. So what we need to do first, though, is actually get those voxel shapes from our Blockbench. So go back to Blockbench where you have your model all set up. If you didn't save it, or you don't have this window open, you can just import it from the JSON you made and add the textures again. And what we want to do is first take all of these cubes here that are in your outliner. There can't be any other groups. They have to all just be cubes with no folders. Control A to highlight all of them. And you want to, well, actually, let's make a folder first. Make a add group here with outliner. And you want to name this group voxel shapes. And it has to be exactly like this with a capital V and a capital S. So make sure you have a package named voxel shapes. And you want to highlight all of your cubes and just throw them into this package. So every single cube in your model should be inside of this, this folder here called voxel shapes. Once you have that, you want to come to File, Export, and we're going to export a voxel shape. Now, we're going to do this for every single direction, north, south, west, and east. So we're going to have to do each one, which is really tedious, I know. But you can see that our block right now is facing north because of this giant N here. So we can do north first by doing File, Export, Voxel Shape. And we can save to our desktop. Let's just name this one North. And hit Save. All right, so it's saved successfully. Now we need to highlight all of our cubes. We need to go to Transform, Rotate Y plus 90, and that will rotate our block to the right. So now it is facing the east direction. So now we can do File, Export Voxel Shape, and we want to name this East. Go to Desktop, Save, and all good. Now we have to keep doing this for every direction. So flip it again, flip it to the south now, so it's the opposite of north. File, Export Voxel Shape, and again, we're going to name this South and save it to our desktop. And one more time, we have to transform, rotate it to the west. And again, we can see that because north is facing this way and our block is facing west. And we can do File, Export Voxel Shape, and just type west. Hit desktop. All right, so now on your desktop, you should have 4 files, one for north, one for east, one for south, and one for west. Now, inside of each of these files is a little bit of code that you're going to use inside of the game. So go over to your IntelliJ, and right below your facing variable here, we want to make a couple variables. Let's first make our private static final voxel shape, and we're going to name this shape underscore n. And this stands for voxel shape underscore north. And this is going to equal the code that you just generated from Blockbench. So to get what this equals, go to your north.java that you just made from Blockbench, right click, edit notepad, and you want to copy all of this code here, and then just paste it right in. Oh, that's my recording software. You want to paste it right into your variable here. And you want to make sure to import stream, and you want to import voxel shapes as well, and you want to import iBoolean function. All right, and last thing we need to do is at the end of all of this code, right before the last semicolon, just do .get, so we actually get the voxel shape. Now, what this is doing is setting this voxel shape to the cuboid that we made in the game, or in Blockbench rather, facing the direction of north. And we can just bring all of these up here just to make it a little bit cleaner for everyone. But you're gonna have to do this for every single direction. So north, west, south, and east. So get ready. It's going to take a little bit of time, but there we go. All right, so this is all good. Now we need to do the same thing with public static final voxel shape. This one is going to be shape underscore east. So shape underscore e is going to equal, and then it's going to equal the code from the east.java that we generated. So right click, edit notepad. You want to copy all this code just like last time and paste it in. And again, make sure we get that .get, and we can clean this up as well, just so that it looks a little bit nicer and it's more readable, because I don't want it all to be so blocky like this. Okay, there we go. Now I'm just gonna copy it this time, just copy what you have up here, and we're just gonna change the name to, let's do south next. And this is gonna equal the code from our south.java that we generated. Again, right click, copy, and then paste it in. I know it's super tedious, but just bear with me. And then at the end again, .get, very important method to add. And we're gonna clean this up, just like last time. Again, this is not necessary, but I just wanna do this so it looks nice and readable. All right, and then last one, finally, we can just copy this again. And this one is gonna be shape underscore west, so shape underscore W. Is equal to, go to west.java, open this up, copy, and you want to paste it in, and again add that .get method at the end. And we're gonna make it all pretty, all nice and pretty, just like all the other ones. And then we are almost set to go. Okay, so now that we have our voxel shapes, we need to actually set them in the game. So to do that, because our block is directional, we do need to override the get shape method. So just come over here and you want to @override get shape. Let's find it. There we go, get shape. Hit OK. And again, we want to get rid of this super here. And we want it to return something custom. So let's actually get rid of this whole line here. And we want to have a switch case statement for the direction that's facing. And then based on the direction, we can return the voxel shape as necessary. So we want to do switch. And then the variable we're going to pass in is going to be our states, our block state dot gets. And then we're going to pass in the facing value. So again, this is getting where the block is facing when you place it. And then based on this knowledge, we're going to have 4 cases. First case is going to be north. If the facing direction is north, then we want to return, just as you would expect, shape underscore n. So we want to return the north facing shape if it's facing north. Then we can do the same thing for the other directions. So same thing for case south, or sorry, case, we should do it in order. Case east is going to return shape underscore e. And again, one more time, so 2 more times actually. Case south is going to return shape underscore s. And then last one, finally, case west is going to return shape underscore w. All right, great. And we do actually need a default just in case none of these are returned, which is probably never going to happen. But just in case, we do want a default that is just going to return the north shape. So shape underscore n. And this is going to prevent any issues from happening in the game, semicolon. All right, so we're all done with the shape and direction of our block. One more thing I want to talk about before we check it out in the game is you can actually override a method if you'd like down here at override. And again, this is optional, called get ambient occlusion light value. And this value, if we get rid of this super method, if we get rid of this, you can return a value between 0 and 1, a float between 0 and 1. And what this is going to do is determine how strong the shadow is. So if you'd like to modify the shadow, this is where you'll do it. There will be some more info in the description, I think, but the lower the value this is, so like if it's 0 or 0.1, the more shadow you're going to get. If you were to set this to 1, that would pretty much remove the shadow entirely from the block. And you can mess around with this yourself. I'm gonna set this to 0.6, so there's like a moderate shadow when we place the block down, but it's not too strong of a shadow. The reason I mention this is because when you set a custom voxel shape, sometimes it can get rid of the shadow, so you might want to set one yourself. And again, this does return a float, so 0.6 f float, but you can set this to whatever you'd like. And I'm now going to run the game, and let's test out our brand new block. Alright, so we're inside of the game now, and if we take our custom block and we place it down, you can see that everything is working perfectly now. There's no more seeing through the ground, and as you can see when we hover over our block here, the voxel shape is now perfectly aligned with the actual block, and it's hard to see because the texture is black, but one way you can test this is if you see when we walk over our block, when we walk over the chimney, it does treat it as an entirely new step up. So that does mean that the voxel shape is actually set, because otherwise the game would just think that this is just like a singular block with no extra details on it. So yeah, that's one way that you can check, but now you have a perfectly working custom block with your own model in the game. Alright, so that's going to do it for this tutorial. Thanks guys so much for watching. Just remember that if you want your block, your custom block, to drop something or drop itself, then you are going to have to make another loot table, and I've got other videos on that you can check out. So don't forget to add those things if you want a fully working block. But thanks guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.